Each of the powers, European powers, during the days of slavery had their own way. Guns, AK-47, colonization. But the French have ensured, and the French swore that Haiti will never know peace. They came to the colonies and they wanted to convert you into Frenchmen and French women. To speak French, you are to be a total Frenchman or a total French woman. And its impact are things that are with us. And of course, the vow that was made by the French, Haiti will never know peace.
This is a small extract from what PLO Lumumba is saying about France's brutal colonial legacy and its lasting impact on Africa and beyond. His sharp words reveal hidden truths that challenge what many think they know about history. Let's watch the rest of the video.
I give you the history and what is contemporary, that it may be understood that slavery, colonization, and its impact are things that are with us. See what is happening in Haiti now. Gangs in Port-au-Prince with AK-47s and other military-grade equipment and machetes in the streets, courtesy of the legacy of slavery and, of course, neo-colonization. And, of course, the vow that was made by the French, Haiti will never know peace. Haiti is a very sad state. The first Black African country to regain independence, and we know the great Haitian independence fighter, Toussaint de Louverture. That was the man who defeated Napoleon, and he was never forgiven for that. When he defeated Napoleon, the French never forgave him, and of course they were granted independence in 1890s, and it was Black dominated. But the French have ensured, and the French swore that Haiti will never know peace. That they humiliated us by defeating Napoleon, they will never know peace. Number one, unlike the British, who simply were interested in your resources and therefore engaged in what was called direct rule, the French wanted to assimilate you. So their policy was assimilation. They came to the colonies and they wanted to convert you into Frenchmen and French women, to speak French. And once they had picked a few of you and took them to the Sorbonne, you had to be a total Frenchman or a total French woman. The French never intended to leave. They never intended to leave Suriname, Senegal, or Mali, or Guinea-Conakry, and they were vicious. They punished you. They humiliated you. They did not want you to speak your language. I do not know why they were that harsh. Perhaps it's because of their history. Remember, this is a country that had kings. This is a country that had Marie Antoinette. This is a country that had King Louis XVI, and there was a time it's King Louis XIV, who at one time, when he was asked, and what is the state? I think that is that experience. King Louis XIV, when they were controlling France, he was asked, and what is the state? He said, "L'État, c'est moi. I am the state." Their harshness can be seen when, on the eve of independence in African countries, they signed the pact for the continuation of colonization. The yes-no vote for French colonists to decide whether, after so-called independence, they would retain connection and connectivity with Paris. They gave everybody the opportunity to vote yes or no, but they did not want you to vote no. So that when Guinea voted no under Ahmed Sékou Touré, when they were leaving, they destroyed everything that was capable of being destroyed. Find themselves at a time when they are very weak economically, when at home the population of immigrants is growing bigger and bigger. You go to cities such as Marseille, you find Algerians, you find Moroccans, you find Senegalese, you find Guineans, you find Burkinabe, and things are not happening as they used to be then. In the former colonies that you thought you are controlling, a breed of young men and women begin rising. They rise in Guinea-Conakry, And the first thing they do is they say, we abolish all the agreements that exist between us and France. You can see even as we speak during the coup d'etats in Africa, the arrogance. You tell a country which is equal in international law that we have accredited our ambassador, we do not care. France, the home of revolution, the home of coup d'etats at one time, can not recognize a revolution when it's taking place, and they say, accept our ambassador. We don't accept the revolution. That is France for you. Arrogance. Their cruelty, I think, comes out of a big psychological burden which they visit, transfer of aggression. It is painful, and they do not know how to behave. As somebody once said, without Africa, there is no France. Without our former colonies, give France only 20 years, and it will be one of the poorest nations in the continent of Europe. And that is going to happen. And they are resisting because for them this is life and death. The stars, which I can now perfectly read, are telling me that their goose is cooked, and very well cooked. During the parade in the morning, pupils used to recite our ancestors, the Gauls. A black pupil saying that their ancestors were the Gauls. They were harsh because their very survival depended on these colonies. And their harshness can be seen when on the eve of independence in African countries, they signed the pact for the continuation of colonization. The school bully who takes lunch from every little boy and little girl thinks that he is invincible. Then one day, the little boy says, today you are not taking my lunch. And what the little boy does is to hit you when you did not expect. And you find yourself on the ground and everybody is laughing at you. France did not see what is happening in West Africa coming. And the first thing they do is they say, we abolish all the agreements that exist between us and France. They rise in Burkina Faso and they say the same thing. They rise in Mali and they say the same thing. They rise in Niger, which has been providing you with uranium. Now you can't take it. That is going to happen. And they are resisting because for them this is life and death. Argentina deliberately decided to whiten the population. So most of the coloreds and blacks in Argentina were eliminated. But the point is several problems. You remember there was a time when coup d'etats were the thing in Latin America, whether it was in Brazil, it was a military government, whether it was in Uruguay, coup d'etat, in Argentina, coup d'etat, Honduras, coup d'etat, Chile, coup d'etat, Peru, coup d'etat, in Central America, Nicaragua, coup d'etat, Panama, coup d'etat, Costa Rica, civil war until 1948, Mexico. And I think there'll always be people who feel, oh, we are not being treated right, things are not right, but largely people coexist. And we have seen that over a long period, even in areas where you thought that there would be problems in the political arena, in the economic arena, you have fairly reasonable representation. Latin America's history must also be understood in the revolutionary spirit. If you look at Brazil, for example, which was colonized by Portugal, which is was one of the weakest and poorest nations in Europe, there was a time when Portugal actually depended on Brazil in the mid 1990s, when Portugal itself had coups. You remember in the 60s, the coup that was mounted against Marcelo Caetano by Antonio de Spinola until 1977. These countries freed themselves very early, and they did not want to be like Europe. They did not want hard-nosed capitalism like Europe. They wanted societies that were a little bit more egalitarian. They say, we think When you are socialist, you take care of social welfare things. You take care of education, you take care of health, you take care of these basic things. And I think that that is now serving them well. 1948, they don't even have an army. They abolished an army. And you remember that in the early days, I think it is in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, they entered into the Rio de Janeiro Pact, which says that if you attack anyone who is the Rio de Janeiro Pact, then you attack all. So a combination of factors made Latin America very different. The Americans always wanted to treat Latin America as their backyard. And they feared, of course, that socialism during the days of the Soviet Union, that the Soviet Union was in Cuba, Soviet Union was everywhere. So there was always this resistance. And people hated the capitalists in Latin America. And that is why those who claimed to be socialists were in ascendance. And when government settled, they did not ignore what are socialist policies. And that continues even as they suffer here and there to serve them reasonably well. That is not to say that you don't have problems in Nicaragua, or that you don't have problems in Peru, or that you don't have problems in Bolivia, or that you don't have problems in Colombia or Uruguay or Argentina. You do. But the orientation of Venezuela, the orientation is socialist, but the intermeddling of America is ever present. Now, when you don't obey America, they want to ensure that you fail. Central America and the Caribbean has a very interesting history. I remember when we were being taught history, that was called the New World. New because it is the Spaniards specifically who went to that area. And it must never be forgotten that Christopher Columbus, who is said to have discovered the New World, was actually on his way to India. He got lost. And when he met the indigenous Americans, he called them the Red Indians because he thought he was in India. But the French also found themselves in areas such as the Suriname, and even the Dutch found themselves in what is called the Dutch Antilles. So these new lands became the subject of slavery initially because the local peoples were decimated. And Brazilians, if you go to Brazil, there is a very large population of Yorubas. There is also a very large population of Ovambo and of Imbundu from what is today Angola and also Mozambique. So once again, you can see it is the colonizers who are coming from their colonies or the areas that they had conquered in the African continent and taking them to Latin America. The Spaniards also took people from their colonies in different, and some of them were not even their colonies, but they took them from Africa in the area that is now called Equatorial Guinea. And in Jamaica, you also find those. In fact, there is a place in Jamaica in the mountains where you have the commandos. These were slaves who ran away and went to the mountain, and they became free even in that environment. And of course, these then became the target where you took some of the slaves, and slavery was alive and well in that particular area, and they were enslaved during that particular area. Then the era of decolonization, I think it is in the month of September 1812. That is the period when all the Central Americans regained their independence in 1812. And it was through the activities, the decolonization process started with people like Simón Bolívar, who is, if you find many of the states there, you'll find a man called, like Venezuela actually so calls itself the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And I think Bolivia is actually named after Simón Bolívar. So these were the individuals who then started the idea of fighting this, both after slavery, the decolonization, and of course the much younger people will remember Ernesto Che Guevara. And we don't mention Cuba in the mix. Cuba was also, of course, controlled by the Spaniards. We have not mentioned Bahamas in the mix. All these were countries that suffered under classical slavery and subsequently colonization by the Western European powers, to be specific.
History like this isn't just about the past. It's about the struggles and power shifts shaping our world today. What do you think about Lumumba's take on France and its colonial legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more eye-opening content. Watch this video next. I am sure you will love it.